Kind of start off with whoever wants to go first. So thank you
April,
both
don't
for.
you
Nope,
start
this is the
it.
most senior member here. She's been here for 30 years, so we're gonna let her kick it
Oh
off.
my goodness.
30 years at Gonzales Community Health Center. Correct?
Yep, plus, right?
Formerly,
No, not
Right
plus,
at 30.
just right at.
Okay, yep, so you definitely deserve to go first. Okay.
so tell me a little bit about yourself, Patrick. Where you're from, family,
Okay.
anything you want to start off with.
Okay.
Your background.
All right.
Anything you want to
My name is Patrick Caldwell, and I work for the Gonzales Community Health Agency as a women's health nurse practitioner. I'm originally from Arkansas, but I've been with the Community Health Center for 30 years now, and I have two children. My son is 33, my daughter Candace is 23, and been married to my loving husband for 40 years. I was diagnosed with breast cancer 15 years ago, 2008. And I was diagnosed with inductal carcinoma, where I stayed under treatment for 10 years. My treatment was a lumpectomy, left breast. And at the time I was diagnosed, they had come out with this new procedure for radiation called a mammocyte radiation. So I had my lumpectomy, and they put a catheter into the site and left it for a week. After that week, then I was sent for my treatment, and I had radiation twice a day for 1 week. So I stayed at a hotel there in Austin and went back and forth morning and afternoon to the site for my radiation. After radiation, then I went on a oral medication prophylactic for 10 years. So I'm 15 years out.
Wow.
Wow.
April, what about you? And where are you from? Background? Anything you want to?
Okay, my
Discuss
name
about.
is April Hall. I'm a family nurse practitioner here at the Gonzales Community Health Center for approximately about 15 years now, I think. Coming up on that, yes, working with this population. I have two children, two daughters. One is 27 and the other is 18-year-old. She's in college, plays volleyball. I was also diagnosed with breast cancer 10 years ago. I had a lumpectomy, right-sided. My course was a little bit different than Patrick's. I had to have chemotherapy and radiation. But I was also on the same prophylactic medication. I still take that, and I still follow my doctor on a regular basis. So looking at these two stories, you can definitely see we were both diagnosed with breast cancer, both had different paths, but we're both still standing today.
Now, I kind of wanted to ask too. Thing that always came to my mind for both of you is, how did you initially feel when you got that news about breast cancer, that you have breast cancer? For Patrick, what are the first thoughts that came to your head?
Well, when I was diagnosed with breast cancer, of course, I went in for a regular screening, had been getting screenings for 26 years at the St. David's Women's Center. So they had 26 years of film. When I had my mammogram done that year in 2008, they told me to wait in the waiting area until they were through with the screening. So a nurse came in and said, we need to do more film. We need to look at it closer because we see something of a shadow. So they took me back in and did more. Then I was placed back into the waiting room again. The nurse returned and said there was a shadow there, and they were able to find that shadow because they had 26 years history. They had all those films to look at and was able to see that there was a difference there. Just a shadow, didn't say it was a lump, didn't say it was a mass. But they recommended me to do a biopsy. So the following, after about 2 weeks, I was sent in with Dr. Fleming, who also worked with St. David's Breast Center. Did my lumpectomy, and I got my results back within 7 days. I got a result back, and I was working at one of the sites in Luling, and I got a phone call. The nurse came and got me and said it was a Dr. Fleming on the phone and he wanted to speak to me. And he gave me the news of I had cancer. Um, of course, I was working at the time. Tears came to my eyes. And I had a longtime nurse that also have stood beside me, Miss Wade, who came to my rescue at the time I was on the phone, and she didn't even have to ask me what was going on. She already knew. She'd say, okay, you can't feel sorry for yourself. Let's go on. Cancer does not mean death. You're going to get through this. And we went back to seeing patients like nothing ever happened. But as seeing patients, it still was in my mind that, I had just been diagnosed and what's going to happen to me. Miss Wade has also went through breast cancer about 10 years prior to me. So she kind of knew how to guide me through this. When you're diagnosed with breast cancer, it doesn't only affect the person that has it, it infects the entire family. So my children at that time was in grade school, and I had to sit down and tell them. And my son was about, I don't know, 9 maybe. And he asked me, Mom, are you going to leave me? When he told me that gave me the desire to fight. I had to not only fight for me, but I had to fight for him as well.
Was there anyone you turned to when you got the news?
I called my brothers, of course. We're a very close family. I called my husband and told him, and they just couldn't believe, the news. A lot of times people look at you and say, how can that happen to you? You're such a nice person. Cancer does not have a gender. Cancer does not have it picks and chooses. The main thing I turned to was the Lord. I've got very strong in my faith. I often prayed. I often went to prayer. And Miss Wade had taken me to this prayer service. And these ministers, she has a strong background for religion. And she has 5 brothers that are ministers. So we was holding a conference at that time, and it was 7 ministers there. And her oldest brother asked me, he said, well, they was praying for different people. He said, where did they tell you your cancer was located? And I told him, and he said, do you mind if I place my hand there? And he did. And they prayed. And during the prayer, I could feel this strong fire burning like in my breast. It felt like the fire went through the chest here, through my breast and out the back of my chest. And when it was over, he said, I'm going to tell you something. You're going to have to go through something. You're going to go through it, but you're going to be okay. And that gave me another strong will to fight as well.
Well, thank you, Patrick. What about you, April? How did you, when you got that news about the breast cancer, what was the first thing that came to your mind? How did you feel? Where were you? What was the situation like?
So my situation is slightly different from Patrick's and highlights the importance of regular screenings as well as self-exam. So I just put my hand on my chest, just laid it there, and felt a lump. So I know I have a family history on my dad's side of cancer. So of course I went in and got it checked. And I was, I'm in my mid-30s. So they're like, no, it's not cancer, to reassure you, but let's go ahead and send you for the biopsy. And I'm a healthcare provider. They do the biopsy, they do the ultrasound, look at the images. Of course, it's cancer, but you wait on the confirmation. I remember I was driving when the radiologist who did my biopsy called me and said, it definitely is cancer. So in a nutshell, what you feel in that moment is fear. You feel fear because it's a fear of the unknown. It's a fear of, am I going to die? Who's going to take care of my family? I also had school-age children at that time. So that was truly my biggest fear. As Patrick stated, I had to fight for them. I didn't want to imagine a life with them or not having their mother around. Because I had daughters on top of that. So definitely just fear was the main thing. But it is so important that we get our regular screenings, that we're doing self-exams. Because if you look at us, two different ways, but it was found. I'd never had a mammogram. It wasn't time for me to have a mammogram. I absolutely would not have made it if I had not had found that lump. I had a very aggressive form of breast cancer. It's triple negative. Initially, they thought they did find it to be 10% hormone receptive in some areas when they went, and did further testing, but extremely aggressive form of cancer. You don't make it long with that type of cancer if you don't seek treatment, aggressive treatment. So fear would be one word just to sum up everything.
And was there anyone specifically that you turned to during this time that you helped you through it, or any kind of situational?
Honestly, I would say everybody turned to me. Once it was known, especially here at work, I'll focus on work first. Once it was known at work, Patrick came to me immediately. She went to my first appointment with me. She went, just anything I needed. She was there to be there. She was a support. She talked to me about her experience. Miss Wade spoke to me. They talked to me about Miss Wade's experience. Eva, who runs BCCS, came to me immediately. I was going to see one provider. She said, no, I work with these providers. This is who I'd like for you to see. Between her and Patrick, I was in to see that person the next day. I was having my lumpectomy a week after. The work family was so strong during that period of time. And as Patrick states that, I was able to work through both chemo and radiation because I had that support. It wasn't just Patrick and Miss Wade. It was Linda Valdez, Gracie. It was all the staff that was here at that time. They really supported me. When they saw that I was not quite up to it, they would go above and beyond. They brought me food to nourish me. They made sure I was drinking water. They offered to drive me places. And then outside of work, my friends and family definitely stepped up. I didn't really have to ask for anything because I wouldn't have. I would have drove myself to chemo. I mean, that's just who I am. But they stepped up, they organized it. There was no question. It was just done. So, again, I didn't turn to anybody. They turned to me. I'm just so grateful for everybody here, my friends, my family, the support. And I will pass that on to anyone. Patrick was a role model for that. She really just stepped up and said, no, I'm here for you because I've been through this.
And I also want to say that breast cancer doesn't only affect women, it affects men too. 1 out of 1,000 men are affected with breast cancer. So when I do my exams on my male population, I also educate them on breast exams and demonstrate to them how they should do a self-breast exam.
And it's, like I said, a lot of men don't think about that either. A lot of us men don't. They said that breast cancer only affects women, so why do I have to worry about it? So,
and especially if you have a family history of breast cancer.
Yes,
so
I do have a strong family history of breast cancer. My great-great-grandmother, my grandmother. I have 5 aunts. I have a niece that was diagnosed at the age of 17. She lived through her first lumpectomy and her treatment. 3 years later, it came back in her right breast. She lived another 3 years after that. And when it came back in her right breast, she had a child 8 months old. And because of the treatment was so strong and it made her so sick, she decided not to go through treatment on her second round. And at the age of 23, she passed.
Such a young age to be going through something like that. She had a child?
Yeah, she had 3 children. Her youngest was 8 months old.
Wow.
So I am a big advocate on women doing their breast examinations, just overall preventative health with male and female. Because a lot of things that we're diagnosed with screenings, we can overcome these things.
As you can see, even though our journeys were very different, we still were able to overcome. So it's definitely possible. One thing I would add, and I don't know if you felt this way, before I was diagnosed with breast cancer, I've always been empathetic to my patients. I mean, that's just, I am. But to be on the other side as a patient added a new layer to that. I'd never had a chronic illness. Of course, I'd had children, but you understand the fear they're feeling, the unknown. It just allows you to really just be empathetic to what they're going through.
Exactly. And now when I diagnose women and will have to come in, they have to come in and I have to tell them, I'm open to showing them not my site. I'm open to showing them what it looks like, what it feels like. Because sometimes that makes them feel like, hey, she did it, I can do it too. And they've got so many prostheses now that you can use that, you know, a lot of women, when they were doing constructive surgery years and years ago, women just felt like, you know, I'm not a woman anymore. I feel like my body has been mutilated. But when I show them how things go and they live the experience with me, I think they have a better outcome and they can say, hey, this does not mean death. If she done it, I can do it too.
Gives them hope.
Yes.
That's strong.
Yes.